Hi, I'm Steve, and I'm an elder at the church here. Most of you know that. Well, for this month, we're talking about communication. We learn to communicate at a very early age, and one thing I'm going to be talking a little bit about is different types of communication. And as I thought about it, we learn to communicate even before we can talk. If you think about a baby and how they can communicate without saying a word, they can get their message across, can't they? So what I did is I looked at what Webster had to say about the definition of communication, and really it's a process by which information is exchanged between individuals and groups through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. We all have different styles of communication, and effective communication can really vary a lot. Some of those things that can affect how we communicate can be our personality type, our background, our experience, and even our gender. And if you've worked in a workplace or been in situations in families, or just talking with our neighbors, we find that we have different styles, and it makes a difference. Sometimes I feel like I'm doing a pretty good job of communicating, but if I take and ask some of my coworkers or even my spouse, sometimes I find that I'm not doing that great at communicating. And so it's an area that I think we all can work on. And I know I need to keep working on it, even though I'm an old guy now and should have plenty of experience communicating. It's really important that we articulate vital information in a manner that's really clear. Obviously, it might be clear to me, but it may not be clear to whoever I'm trying to communicate to. Thorough. Sometimes we think about, I really covered this topic well as I was communicating, but maybe I have knowledge that the listener doesn't have. So are we really communicating in a thorough way? And then timely. It's really frustrating for a lot of us when we get the message too late, or maybe we just got part of the message. So we have to make sure that we're timely in what we're communicating. I don't know this guy, but a guy named William Whitey said, the great enemy of communication, we find, is the illusion of it. Think about that. The great enemy of communication, we find, is the illusion of it. Because a lot of times we think that we're communicating and maybe we're really not. And the problem with communication is if the speaker has the illusion that the receiver really doesn't hear and understand, we're not communicating at that point. So as I think about what elements comprise communication, there's some different things that we can communicate in different ways, basically. I'm just going to take and outline 5 different ways that we can communicate. Maybe when we're thinking of communication, verbal is probably the first one that comes to mind. And again, that's the spoken word. That's pretty straightforward. But also nonverbal. And I've seen some of the statistics on nonverbal communication, like body language, and it's pretty amazing how effective that can be. And even though I may be saying the right words, if I'm rolling my eyes, or maybe I'm not making eye contact, maybe I'm distracted, all of those things can make a big difference in how effective our communication is. Another way we communicate, obviously, is written. And maybe with emails, we don't write many letters anymore, but maybe we send cards and that kind of thing. Text, obviously, we do a lot of texting, and different generations do different types of written communication. And sometimes we need to think about that when we're when we're communicating, because maybe I think that an email is an effective way to communicate, but maybe there's a generation younger than I that texting works a lot better for them. So I think we just need to think about who our audience is. Another element of communication that sometimes we overlook, which is too bad, but it's listening. And usually when I think of communication, I think of me telling you something. But really, for there to be effective communication, there has to be a listener involved, and there needs to be an understanding of what I'm trying to communicate. So really, I could argue that listening is really the most valuable of all types of communication. And the last one is visual. And again, I think that's obvious that there's a lot of things that we can see that we get the message. It might be a billboard, it might be some kind of a note that somebody gives us or whatever. You know, and Scripture is not silent on this topic. And Ephesians 4:29 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building up others according to their needs that benefit those who listen." You know, and I think that's really important that we think about what are we communicating, and is it really positive, is it really beneficial? In fact, I'm reminded of my mom who would often say, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. And I think many times if we took that advice to heart, we would find ourselves in a much better place. So in the remaining time we have, I want to put out there, and we'll look at a proficiency assessment, and it's kind of a self-assessment basically. And if you kind of rate yourself, 5 being consistently and 1 being never, I just kind of like you to take you through some assessment questions that you can think about.